Just a few videos ago, Kagurabachi was giving me the vibes of a final battle, and I kept talking about how this felt like the climax of the series, even though I knew it wasn't, but it felt like that. Chihiro and Samura's struggle against Yura, only for Soga to arrive in the vessel that is Yura. The possibility that Samura and Chihiro might have just pulled it off, and then only for the break to happen. Enten was broken, and with that break, Chihiro's hopes and dreams went with it, a broken heart and a broken sword. And now we fast forward to chapter 110, and Kagurabachi feels to me now as if we're only just finishing the prologue for this series, similar to how the first chapter had that 36-month time skip. It's kind of what it feels like we're about to go into right now. Prologue is over, and the real stuff starts now. So let's talk about it.
Sometimes you gotta close the door to open a window.
This chapter opens up with Chihiro's broken and bleeding heart slowly beaten back to life, with the flames of Suzaku revitalizing him here, with Chihiro recognizing what is actually happening, taking in the black flames and remembering back to a time that he used them himself against Yura, well, more so Black Lightning. Now, I've mentioned this in previous videos, but I've long theorized that these swords have a life force of their own. If spirit energy is essentially life force and these swords can channel that, then they kind of are alive. And I explored the concept, and now Chihiro's own words kind of confirm my suspicions. Quote, "This black power, it's like that other time. Power that transcends the threshold of death. But the Toby Mune was still intact. This time it's different. This sensation, Mr. Samura's stake in his own life." Now, that note of the Toby Mune still being intact is what I really want to focus on here, because back in the Rakazaichi, Chihiro was using the life force of Cloud Guardia, which strained itself to empower him. But now it's Samura straining himself to empower Toby Mune to heal his friends. So Samura is the one who's burning his life force away. He's staking his own life on what needs to be done. Now, I like the idea of a younger Chihiro using the enchanted blades and using their life force to achieve his goals, in stark comparison to Samura, who is now doing the same but using his own life force. I mean, Samura is the man that Chihiro's pleaded with to live his life in a different way for a better future, using his life now. He is betting on that better future that Chihiro was pleaded with him to have. Now, the idea of Iori pops into Chihiro's, and I've got to say, I think that was a real stinger in the heart. If you've been around this channel long enough, then you know that chapters 70 to 73 were they were my apex for this series so far. I mean, there's still been some really good moments, but I think in terms of character writing, Hokazono really excelled in those 3 chapters with Samura and Iori's backstory. It really hit home for me. So to see this panel flash before Chihiro, because that is the representation of Chihiro's goals here, essentially. He fought so hard and worked so hard to make sure Samura would see the light, to live a better life for Iori. And once again, Samura is sort of slipping back into old habits, risking it all and placing his hopes and dreams into Chihiro, the man who made him see a better way. And there's some sort of poetry towards that, but I can't quite see what it is. Now, what I will say is, I don't want to see any slander. Oh, I don't want to see any slander. I don't want to see any Samura as a bad dad in the comments, because I will find you. I will find you. I will not tolerate any slander upon my goat in the comments here. But Chihiro at this time right now is having a bit of a crisis. That his weakness with the sword is what's causing him to fail at his goals right now. Despite the power that he wields, his failure is not the power that he wields, but rather the skill to wield it properly. Chihiro is a boy playing a man's game here, and the chapter moves forward showing us Samura covered in black flames. Flames fed by the spark of life. Samura as a character is one who always seems to be cool, calm, and collected, if you would like. And there's a few moments within the series where you see him in moments of panic, frustration, and getting raw emotion out of him. But this moment right here, I'm not sure that there has been anyone more locked in than Samura is right now. He is so committed to his plan of action right now. It's almost chilling. When I first read this, I'm getting goosebumps on my back thinking about this again. But when I first read this, I got goosebumps reading this moment, because Samura Suzaku right now is currently sweeping the entire area of Samura's awareness, combating and fighting the malediction, healing the victims of their fatal wounds, and leaving Shiba to evacuate the remaining folk who were injured. Now, in the previous chapter, Shiba talks about how he should be gathering the folk who might have a chance against Soga in the future. Now, Shiba right now is probably trying to save everyone, but given the situation, I don't think it would surprise me if he triages the fighters who he thinks can stand against Soga in the future and prioritizes saving them over people who would just be fodder to Soga, I suppose. And it's probably, when you think about it, a bit of a difficult decision to make, but it's one that's got to be made. Now, Soga focuses his entire power of life consumption directly onto Samura, and to counter this, in response, Samura applies the full force of his Black Flame Suzaku to himself, declaring that he will reduce Soga to the brink of death and drop him back into his dungeon from whence he fucking came. Now, there's this beautiful thing happening here with Samura representing the forces of life and Soga the forces of entropy, this unstoppable force meeting this immovable object, the power to annihilate all life, counteracted by the marginally stronger power to restore all life, dueling with their raw bodies returning to their point of origin. Now, I mentioned this earlier, how Chihiro wielding all this power, but what he has in power, he lacks in skill to wield it. And when you compare him to these two, they somewhat represent the opposite here. All the power and the skills that they have to wield, but I think deep down they both know Chihiro has the capacity to stop Soga, and so Samura is now fighting Soga to get Chihiro that opportunity so he can try again, more battle-hardened and with more experience, and Soga is fighting to stop Chihiro because he probably senses something. There's that little moment a couple of chapters ago where Soga looked at his sword and he could feel something was just off just before he broke Enten. I think that's why Soga is trying so hard to sort of make sure that Chihiro is snuffed out here. Now, Soga and Samura begin clashing in some of the most beautiful action sequences I've seen within this series. There is something beautiful about when Hokazono moves away from the powers of the series, the sorcery of the series, and the enchanted blades of the series to instead focus on the sword fights and the movements. There's something beautiful about that. Ever since Soga was 18, he has been entrusted with the Magatsumi, and every duel that he has took a part of was to become an execution. And in one more beautiful yet brutal exchange, Samura's fingers are cleaved off as he is slashed across the face, and I think here lies the kinks in Samura's armor here. I think they're beginning to show the weaknesses, because Samura's flames that he has enveloped himself with, they didn't have the capacity to heal his existing wounds, meaning he saved everyone here but himself. This was his plan. He was here to stall. As Soga calls him, he's the last bastion. And I think Soga is definitely very, very aware of this fact as well. I mean, he at one point even tells Samura that he knows how this was end. He knew. Samura knew how this was going to end. Now, I'm just going to say it right here and now. Samura's not dying. Okay, you can call it copium. He's not dying. And even if he does die, it's a hoax. It's fake news. It never happened. It's pure fiction. You made that all up. Thank you for coming to my TED Talk. Now, Samura's power is dwindling away fast. Now, remember, he's tied his life force basically to this power. And think of this, if I had to explain this sort of like in Elden Ring terms, think of him as using his health bar and he's sacrificing HP to gain himself a strength boost. But every time he takes a hit, that health bar is dropping, meaning the strength boost is going to disappear quicker the more he gets injured. And because of that, the regeneration of Enten is no longer happening. Enten still remains broken, but it's no longer fading. It's healed to a point. The hilt and the handle are healed to a point. I don't know if the remaining end of the blade is gone or not, but yeah, Enten survives, but barely. And all while this is happening, Samura and Soga are having a conversation in a realm similar to that of Sojo and Chihiro. Now, if anything, I would be more inclined to say that this is actually the memories of Samura that we're seeing Soga sort of invade, because we've seen Samura having conversations like this with Chihiro before, where Chihiro was practicing with the sword and Samura was sort of giving him a bit of a lesson. And I do want to point out that this might be a red herring in the skies, but right now, Samura's flames are sort of burning out, and we know Soga can invade minds and see memories because he did it with Yora. So if Soga is winning the fight and Samura's flames are receding as the malediction is encroaching on Samura's life, it's possible that he is seeing Samura's memories and basically invading them, because if the malediction is invading Samura's body, then that means Soga's powers are. Does that make sense? I hope that makes sense. But Samura tells Soga that ever since Soga was little, he's been training with the sword, and by 18 he was a master. But Chihiro's life has been different, because up until 3 years ago, this dude was still just bladesmithing. So he could see how Chihiro would be inferior in comparison to Soga. But in every way, he is just getting started. And I think it's this moment right here that really feels as though we're getting through the prologue of the series. Like, genuinely, in a couple of chapters' time, I genuinely wouldn't be surprised if it said Kagurabachi prologue over. Like, genuinely, I wouldn't be surprised, because this feels like this is the moment where the real shit starts to kick in. And now the final pages kick in, with Soga and Samura facing off for what might be the last time. Everything in this panel and what it represents is just, it's beautiful. Hokazono was in his prime, he was in his bag for this. Quote, the shock of both men sheathing their swords sends rubble flying, their surroundings pulverized by the Magatsumi's destructive power and restored by Tobimune's flames. And now, as both men draw their swords, the rubble begins to melt from the heat, and within that surreal miasma, they meet at the very apex of swordplay. That is just the most beautiful description of sword fighting I think I've ever read. Genuinely. Like, it's just, beautiful. No notes. Now, while all of this is happening, Chihiro is watching on, and the vision burns into his eyes to prepare him for next time to destroy the Magatsumi to slay Akimura Soga. Again, this is the final page, and this moment right here, it signals either a big time skip arc or a full training / reforging arc, because Chihiro and Co. really have no grounds to fight against Soga, so they have to retreat here. They have to get out of here and figure out what the next moves are. And I imagine in the aftermath of this battle here, we're going to see the series take a real slow down turn for a little bit here. And honestly, I'm kind of okay with it, because when you think about it, we've had 100 chapters, over 100 chapters, all action, no breaks, and that is phenomenal. So I am very excited to see what comes next. I'd be happy if the series slowed down a little bit, because again, as I mentioned earlier, chapter 70 to 73 was like really super slowed down. We got to see really fucking good character writing from Hokazono. So I am very, very excited to see the gang sort of pull back, regroup, and get these moments before everything kicks off again. So I really hope that that's the direction that we go in. But yeah, that's everything from me. If you've not already, please be sure to like and subscribe. Go follow me on Instagram, support the Patreon, and as always, I'll catch you guys all in the next one. Much fucking love, big fucking kisses, peace.